Hello again. It's very good to see you. It is a very big struggle as someone who enjoys reading books to try to find other people to talk about books with. And that is a major reason of why I started this channel in the first place. I just wanted to talk about books with like-minded people, and I really have found that through you guys. But shortly before starting this channel, I had the same problem where I just wanted to talk about books with somebody. So I joined a book club back in August. And so we've read 5 books with that book club. And I just kind of wanted to tell you guys about, the books I've read with that group, because some of them are really interesting and I probably would not have heard of them or read them or found out about them at all if I hadn't joined this club. And I also just think the dynamic of the club is very funny because the book club consists of 3 library employees, a 96-year-old man that attends on Zoom, and now me. So I just think that with this group, I have some really good conversations and we talk about some really good books. So I just wanted to tell you guys about the books that we've read. Also, if you stay until the end, I am going to be drawing the winner of the giveaway for this Tiger's Eye book-themed bookmark. So stay tuned for the end. If you entered in the giveaway last week, I will be drawing it at the end of today's video. So let's get right into it. So the first book that I read whenever I joined this book club was They Came Like Swallows by William Maxwell. And this is, I think, just a really underrated book that I wouldn't have probably ever heard of had I not joined this club. But what this book is it is set, I think like right before the armistice for World War I and kind of at the rise of the Spanish influenza. And it is set around this quiet and peaceful family that consists of the mother as, the pillar that holds the family together, kind of this emotional regulator of the family. And just the mother holds up the family as strong and dignified. And then there is the father who is kind of rigid, but really appreciates everything that his wife does, I think. And then there's these 2 boys, this older son and then this younger son. And the story is told through the 3 points of view of those 3 boys, the father and then the 2 little sons. And it is a really impactful story in not only understanding loss and kind of the emotional toll that comes with losing a loved one, especially during a large pandemic like the Spanish influenza was at this time. So it's not only about the emotional toll of loss, but it's also the complete restructuring of life kind of in this time, because these people have to figure out who they are kind of at this time of loss and turmoil and change on both the national and global level, and also just within the community. This pandemic really changes dynamics. And it's really interesting how it's told through the point of views of the father and then the 2 sons, because you can kind of see how loss and change are felt within different entities. Like, of course, the young son is the first point of view that we gain. And so through the eyes of this young boy, we can see how this family interacts with each other. We can see the mother kind of sewing up a diaper for a new baby that they're going to be having soon. Through the eyes of the young boy, it's an innocent and raw view of what the family is, and then kind of you go up in age and the dynamics change and the views change. So it's a really interesting kind of lens to look into society at that time, family at that time, and understanding how life can change through loss, both emotionally and just, wow, my life is so much different in every step of the way. So this is a very, very good book. And I believe Maxwell wrote one other book that I am interested in reading. Maybe he wrote more, but he's got at least one other book that I'm interested in reading. And so if I can ever find more of his work, I will absolutely pick it up, because They Came Like Swallows is a very, very good story. The next book that I read with my group was The Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas by Gertrude Stein. And it is interesting because why is an autobiography written about somebody else? But Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas were two lesbians back in Paris and kind of the pre-World War II era, and they were really big for some reason in the art and literature scene, kind of in like the early 20th century in Paris. So they were friends with all of these big names like Ernest Hemingway, Pablo Picasso, Matisse was there, and this book just kind of looks at the lives of Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas as lovers during this time and interacting with all of these huge names and, you know, throwing these parties, attending parties, interacting with these famous people. These two women are really, really interesting. I didn't like the execution of the story. Gertrude Stein's writing, again, is just really experimental. And I guess she has been inspired kind of by Cubism, like the paintings, the paint style. And so she uses a lot of like repetition and fragmentation with her sentences. And in my opinion, I thought that the writing was just weak. And I also thought that Gertrude Stein was just an incredibly conceited person to because it felt like every sentence of this story was through the eyes of Alice, but Alice was saying, oh, Gertrude said this funny line, and then Gertrude did this funny thing, and then Gertrude did this other funny thing, and every rich and famous person at the party laughed at what Gertrude had to say. Gertrude is so funny. This book felt really conceited, in my opinion. But as I said in the introduction of this video, in my book club, there is a 96-year-old man that attends on Zoom, and I have to say, even when I don't like the book, somehow this man convinces me that the book is good. So actually, he did change my mind on it, and I do actually kind of have a positive opinion of this book, even though whenever I first read it, I didn't like it at all. But what this older gentleman had to say was that Gertrude Stein is incredibly pointed, and within a few short sentences and within a few short words, she can really paint out, you know, full descriptions of these people that they meet really quickly, really concisely, and you feel like you can understand who these people are really, really quickly. And he's right. And there were a couple lines in here that, I mean, they did stand out as interesting and as beautiful. So I am very thankful to have the perspective of that older gentleman because now I like this book. But I kind of do feel like it would be more interesting to do a Google search of Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas more than to read this book. That's in my opinion. This is an interesting book, and these are two really interesting women, but I just personally strongly dislike Gertrude Stein's writing style. I think that they're interesting people, but just Google them, in my opinion. And then next, with my book club group, we read Bastard Out of Carolina by Dorothy Allison. I have mentioned this before on this channel, I believe just one time. I think that it was back in the library reading challenge video because it tackled one of the prompts that I was doing for a challenge at my library. But this is easily one of my favorite books that I've read this year. This is a 5-star read. I mean, the sentences are beautiful and it's super raw. This is a incredibly human story. So what this is Bastard Out of Carolina is about this girl who everybody refers to her as Bone, because she looked like a knuckle bone whenever she was born. But Bone has a really troublesome life because at the very start of her life, her father runs off and she is labeled as a bastard child. And she lives with a very, very poor family in Greenville, South Carolina, I believe it was back in the 1950s. And so in this poverty and with her family, I mean, they just have a lot of struggles. But the largest struggle is her stepfather. And her stepfather treats Bone very, very poorly. I will say that, just to put it into softer words. And her stepfather is just very bad. So everything about Bones' life is a struggle. But why this book is so very good is the writing is, again, just super raw. And it's really interesting to see that as Bone is growing up and getting older, you can kind of see her perception on what is happening to her and how other people interact with her. Her opinions on those things are changing as she's growing older and as she's starting to understand things a little bit more. So you're with Bone, you're aging into this life of poverty and strife and struggle, and you're aging into it and starting to learn and understand through her eyes. Very, very interesting. And it's also really cool to just read about such strong, just utter rage. I mean, this by the end of this book, I mean, Bone is absolutely enraged at her situation. She feels like she can't do anything about it. I mean, just really, I mean, I know I've said it before, but just raw is a fantastic way to describe this book. I also just think that the writing is really, really beautiful and notable, and I think that Dorothy Allison does a really good job of putting all these characters to life. And it's also interesting to see the rest of the characters because as a poor white family in the South during this time, you know, living with your aunts and uncles and, you know, your more extended family is a big part of life at this time. And so you hear about all of Bones' uncles who are just these alcoholic, fun-loving, lady-loving men that just, you know, I mean, their lives are hard too, and they're just seemingly stupid. Or, you know, the aunts who try to hold these men down, but again, they're just alcoholics and they love women. I don't know, like it's a fun story, an angry story, an emotional story. This is a fantastic book. My favorite kind of portion of the story was whenever Bone gets into gospel music, and she feels this like connection to everybody and the world, and like live music makes her feel so like much bigger, I suppose. I don't know. It's really beautiful the way that Dorothy Allison can put this together. And also it's semi-autobiographical. So a lot of the struggles and experiences that Bone experiences in this story, the author has experienced. So it's written about in a sympathetic and true and authentic way. And this book really captures everything that it tries to, and it captures it very, very well. I highly recommend this book if you don't have a weak stomach, I suppose. So good. In my book club's last meeting, we talked about Sula by Toni Morrison, and this is, again, like, this is a really good book, and I'm really glad that I had somebody to talk about it with, because I feel like this is the type of book that you gain more from discussing it than from just reading it yourself. So I'm really glad that I had the club to discuss it with. But what the story is about is our main character, kind of narrator, Nell, and then her best friend, Sula. And these two girls have this lifelong, just tumultuous relationship, and friendship, and just, they are so very different, and their lives are really difficult. A bit of it is put upon themselves, and a lot of it is just their lives are hard. But these two girls struggle a lot. They're really different they're different in different ways, but they just have this friendship that they cannot extricate themselves from. Like, these two girls are so intertwined, and you see them grow from childhood kind of up into adulthood and married life and stuff. But Sula's one of the most bizarre characters I've ever read about before, because she has this complete and utter aloofness to anybody's feelings but whatever she wants at any given moment. And Nell, on the other hand, is a really straight edge, kind of does everything right, handles business, like cares about other people and other people's well-being. And again, just Sula, on the other hand, is aloof to anybody's wants or needs. And she's just this like disastrous character. And it's interesting to see them grow up intertwined and kind of lose touch with one another and come back with one another. These girls are really odd, and just without giving too much away on the story, Toni Morrison's writing is also just really, really bizarre, because I feel like these large events that, you know, should be crashing down the story, these large events occur, and you kind of don't even realize it until you've read a couple sentences and you need to go back and think, wait, did that person just die or something? And then you have to go back and read it. It's like these really large events kind of happen really quietly, and you don't realize it until you kind of get the echoes of it later in the story. Toni Morrison's writing is very bizarre, and it's really, really good. And while you're reading it, you can kind of tell that something masterful is happening kind of under the surface of the water, but you can't quite see it. So I'm really glad that I discussed this with my book club group, because I feel like they helped me see what was happening underneath the surface. Toni Morrison did a really interesting job with Sula. I really, really enjoyed this one. And for our last meeting, I have to finish this book by tomorrow. I'm mostly done. I'll get there, so I'll finish it after I record this. But our last meeting of the year, we were going to talk about Miss Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This is a book that I've tried to read before. I think it was about 3 years ago, kind of whenever I was getting back into reading. I heard that Virginia Woolf's writing was really beautiful and poetic, and I wanted to see what, I wanted to see what that was about. And whenever I tried to read this, I hated this book. I hated it. It was like, Virginia Woolf's writing is stream of consciousness. So just whatever she's thinking, pen is hitting paper, and that is what's coming out. But that doesn't mean that it's not refined. This is a really refined story, and I am finding that I'm enjoying it more the second time around. I won't say that this is a favorite book of all time, but I will say that now that I'm older, wiser, and a little bit more well-read, I can appreciate what Woolf is doing here more than I could a couple years ago. So I'm glad that this book club is forcing me to reread it, because I never would have picked this back up had I not been absolutely forced to do so. But this book is one single day in a woman's life where she is just preparing for a party. And it is set right after World War II, or World War I, kind of between the two world wars. And she's preparing for a party. And so most of the book, you're walking to the flower store. You're sewing up a dress that got a rip in it the last time she wore it. Stuff like that. But it's interesting how Virginia Woolf kind of seamlessly enters into the minds of different people, so you understand what Richard is thinking as Richard is walking down the street and seeing people and thinking about things. Or a soldier who was in World War I and kind of comes out feeling a little bit loopy. You can be in his mind for a little bit, understand what he's thinking. And so it is really interesting how seamless Virginia Woolf is able to carry from one idea to the next. And there is a lot of sentences in here that are just simply put and beautiful, or very, very wordy, but beautiful. So I'm really glad that I'm forced to reread this book, because I can appreciate it for its craft. This is a very interesting read, and I can't wait to discuss it with my group tomorrow. So I'm glad that I have to reread this. So largely my point in recording this video is maybe to inspire some of you guys to join a local library group. I know a lot of bookstores, kind of like local indie bookstores, a lot of them have book club groups. I know a lot of libraries have book club groups. If you can find a book club, please join them, because you meet some interesting characters and you discuss some interesting stories. And a lot of times, discussing a book with somebody else can change your opinion on it, usually for the better. And you can just kind of delve deeper into ideas than you kind of even would have realized or thought about had you just read it yourself. And also, you're introduced to a lot of stories that you wouldn't have known of before. I doubt that I would have ever even heard of Bastard Out of Carolina. I doubt that I ever would have stomached Virginia Woolf's writing ever again because I hated it so much the first time. But I hope that at least if you don't join a book club, I hope at least you can live vicariously through my choices here. And maybe I've convinced you to read some books. Maybe I've at least told you of some books that you might find a little bit interesting. Or maybe you'll look into Gertrude, Stein, and Alice B. Toklas a bit more. But that will conclude my discussion for today's video. But as I said in the intro of this video, I have a giveaway. So to conclude the giveaway on this book-themed Tiger's Eye bookmark, I have written down all of the usernames of everybody who said the keyword in the comments, and all of your names are in this turkey jar. But to pull the names, I wanted to invite the person who gave me the idea to even do a giveaway in the first place, my mom. Mom, come in here.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
All right, so Mom, pull a name. Anybody, let me put this one back in there. Anybody who is calling your name.
Okay.
Pull somebody out, shuffle it
All
around.
right. I think this one.
Okay. All right,
That's
so
good.
the winner is Peter Canetta, 399. Congratulations. My email will be in the description of this video, so shoot me over your preferred address and I will mail it right out to you. And to anybody who entered but did not win, I plan to have future giveaways in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But that is the conclusion of this video, so I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. And thank you to anybody who entered in the giveaway. I really appreciated all of the comments, and it's fun to know that this bookmark will be going to somebody who very much appreciates it.